Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Athletic School podcast. Today, our guest speaker is Belinda Halloran, Coach B, psychology consultant and performance coach. She specialized in maximizing performance, balancing advanced mental conditioning with long term well being. Coach B, thanks so much for joining me. It's a pleasure.
No, thank you for inviting me. It's always, to work with other people who are interested in supporting athletes. It's always a pleasure. So thank you.
Awesome. It's a topic that I think all of us in the sports world are trying to improve in a way and increase performance. So I think a lot of people are going to have good insights and good advice from you on how to do that. Um, to begin with, I wanted to know from you, how would you define mental performance?
Okay, so I'm going to talk about mental performance today in the context of athletes.
Yes.
And just before I talk about the answer the question, just to give you a little bit of background, I was a professional athlete in triathlon for over 15 years. I started my competitive athletic career from the age of 9, and then that sort of moved into being a professional, and then returned to school and studied sports psychology. So I have literally been an athlete my whole life. So my obsession with sport just seems to continue, although I am getting more sedentary as we go. I think the next step for me is probably to write a book, so I'm even less active. Um, but your question is, I was thinking about your question, for athletes, mental performance is just such a pivotal piece in our ability to obtain results. So I wanted to summarize it by saying this. Mental performance is the ability to apply, to develop, to adjust, all things to do with the person. So to be able to adjust your attitude, your perception, your reaction, your strategy, all in the moment and in the context of the sporting arena in order to obtain optimal performance. And that in itself is incredibly difficult. And a lot of people don't realize just how hard that can be.
Yes, I mean, it is challenging. And I mean, I think we all know that there is a relationship between mental performance and physical performance, right? But how much would you say that both are related? Can you perform only in a physical way and not perform mentally, or the opposite can happen as well? How much would you say it's the relationship of these two?
Well, the mental and physical performance really are intertwined. And I believe, to be honest, if we're looking at athletes from all levels, so let's even start at youth athletes, grassroots, and we work our way to high school, to college, to professional, what you'll discover in this important relationship is that the mental side of sport and the relationship in regard to performance becomes more and more important the higher you get. So ultimately, everybody does the same training to a certain extent. All the coaches have gone to the same courses, and there is the genetic and the talent that some athletes are blessed with. But when you get to the level of, say, college sport and above, that capacity to shine in that environment really is dependent on how well you can mentally do the things I talked about, sort of adapt your performance to the conditions. So I believe that performance relationship really gets emphasized the higher you get in sport.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I feel like once I started studying a little bit of the great athletes that we have, uh, they all talk about some side of the mental side that they have been working on. Um, and I'm not sure if it was Novak Djokovic. I think he mentioned that like the difference between the top 100 tennis players in the world in terms of skills are bare like minimum. There's almost no difference. But when it comes to the mental side, that's where the difference is between the top one and the top two and three and so on. So I think talking about the mental performance is something that we forget to work on, and I think it's important for us as athletes. I think we need to realize that um, in order to perform my physical performance to be good, I have to be able to perform in my mind as well.
Oh, absolutely. And, I like that you touched on that tennis player, because it made me think of my favorite tennis player, which is Nick Kyrgios.
Mm.
And I want to make this point because an athlete like Nick, who is unbelievably talented, yet you do see in aspects of his game, perhaps his ability to control his emotions have a negative impact on his performance. If he was possibly able to manage that in a better way, when you look at, say, someone like the Rafas and the Roger Federers, or how they're able to maintain their composure, you just have to wonder just how much better he could be if he could grasp that a little bit better than what he has. Because clearly, he's an unbelievable in many ways. But again, that mental capacity to be able to control your emotions, your reactions to what's happening in your external environment, all will eventually impact your results. So, yeah, it's just so important.
Yeah. Um, and you are about to launch a new program, the Athlete Neuroplasticity Reset Program. Um, what is it about? How is going to work? If you could just tell me a little bit in general how it's going to be.
Okay, well, it's called ANR, and ANR stands for Athlete Neuroplasticity Reset, as you said.
Mhm.
Now, before I tell you the solution, I want to just go back and quickly tell you the problem.
Yeah.
So, over the last 2 years, I decided to take my, academic studies and my years of experience as an athlete, and I got into the field and I just started experimenting. And what I discovered from traditional sports psychology methods is that yes, they're impactful, they're positive. Athletes are responsive when they're with you and when you're reframing situations for them and giving them cues. But when it comes to having lasting effects and the athlete not needing to continually return to the sports psych or the mental performance coach, I wasn't seeing that happen. And I would even have athletes say to me, "Hey, coach, when I'm talking with you, I feel amazing. I feel like I could do anything." But then that is not sustained when they return to their performance environment. So ANR combines the traditional sports psychology methods with neuroplasticity exercises. And I've outlined it on my website on coachbperformance.com, where people can go and have a little bit more of a read about it. But basically, let's put it in the context that athletes really understand. When you're trying to master a athletic skill, you're trying to master the corner, you're in soccer, you're trying to perfect your stroke in freestyle for swimming, your overhand in tennis. You spend hours and hours repeating those exercises to gain mastery. And during that process, you are creating neural pathways in your brain which relate to muscle memory.
Mhm.
So, and that's how we get that result. Honestly, by the time elite athletes get to performance, they're no longer thinking because they're relying on muscle memory. What we want to do with my program is that I want to create independent and new, we call them new habits, new neural pathways which reinforce the positive conversations or the neutral framework, whatever the athlete wants to view the performance lens. And we have to repeat that. So it takes time, it takes work, but we're creating new neural pathways which will hopefully give the athlete a stronger mentality that they won't even need to think about because it'll just switch on.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that made sense, but that's in a nutshell, that's what it is.
Yes, no, it makes a lot of sense. But how is that going to work? Is it a session between you and the athlete, or is it more people involved?
Okay, so basically it's an investment for the athlete because initially I've created a 16-week program which has a total of 8 sessions.
Mhm.
And between those 8 sessions, it's similar to like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Mhm.
um, the athlete and I once we've met and we've discussed the issues that are affecting them, so it's very much case by case. And then I will give them exercises, neuroplasticity exercises, to reinforce what we believe is necessary for the athlete to achieve their goals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so we're combining, I guess, the talk therapy that we do. I don't want to call it therapy, but I want to call it sort of the reinforcement that we do through talking and through strategizing. And then we incorporate that through neuroplasticity exercises. So it is a commitment by the athlete. It's not just have a conversation, go away, feel good, and I'm going to perform amazing. Athletes know it doesn't work like that. The same applies to our mental state. If you're not prepared to invest time and really try to work at changing your mindset, it won't happen on its own. And particularly for athletes who, if they were like me, they've been an athlete since they were a child, and those established neural pathways are pretty much ingrained in how they perceive performance, how they see themselves, how they perhaps interpret coach behavior is a topic, for example. And we need to change that if we want to get the athlete to the level that they wish to get to. And again, so that it's a process, it takes time, but my ultimate goal is that I will do myself out of a job, because I don't want my athletes to be reliant on me. And at the moment, what I feel our current system is that it's very reactive, where we wait till athletes are depressed, then we go fix them. We wait till they're injured, then we go help them. I want healthy athletes to come to me, or any athlete really. Healthy athletes come to me, and we create the mindset that they are striving for before any sort of issues arise. And that hopefully will empower the athlete, make them self-reliant, and also give them a system that they can then repeat if the sporting environment situation changes.
Makes a lot of sense. While you're talking, I was thinking about when some of my experience playing, and how a lot of the times uh, I wasn't in an environment that any type of it wasn't a healthy environment in a way. And I feel that's why a lot of athletes that are trying to get better uh, try to find coaches like you to help them, because they don't feel sometimes not welcome. Sometimes they don't feel like they're always under pressure in a way, like the coach putting a certain pressure on them. And I feel like there's a lot of lack of communication between coaches and athletes, and I feel like that happens a lot in team sports. I'm not that's my experience. I'm not really sure about individual sports, but I've seen so many bad coaching and good coaching as well, in terms of communication and relationship with between the coaching staff and the athletes. But and that's why I feel like a lot of people, a lot of athletes are looking for people like you to help them, and even like some of the posts that you post on Instagram, which I love it, because like that's literally what they are doing, like some of the reactions that the coaches or uh,
Right.
the president of the school running from their obligations. I love that one.
Yeah. I know. And just before I elaborate on what your statement, which I 100% agree with, one of the things when I started using just Instagram to reach my audience, which is youth athletes and
Yeah.
college athletes, um, I'm not ready for TikTok yet. I just couldn't go there. But what I discovered was that I was trying to put a lot of academic material out there and nobody was reading it. And I was like, okay, so I'm going to take a more relatable situations, turn these posts into memes and weave themes in there. And that has been more effective. So just for other, sports psychs out there who are on this platform, people come to social media to disconnect. They come to relax. They don't necessarily want to be lectured. They want a bit of humor. They do want to learn something, but there's so much being thrown at people today that the last thing you want to do is throw more at them without kind of making it slightly entertaining. So that's that piece. But in regard to communication, the secret with my program with A&R is that it's going to be a metaphor for life that you can use not just as a college athlete, but when you go into the work environment and you are faced with a boss that you don't like or you don't like his mannerisms. Unfortunately, that not everyone's the same. And just like adapting to your environment to perform as an athlete, you need the mental skills to be able to interpret and adapt to different people that you're working with. So instead of kind of going, hey, I don't like this environment, let's reframe that and let's go, okay, how do I interpret this environment and understand the people I'm working with a little bit better? And that way, I'm not jumping from team to team or job to job. I'm separating, I'm putting some space between my emotional reaction and I guess the rational interpretation of what's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I think I have been thinking a lot about that because I feel like as athletes, we forget that we are human beings first and not athletes. You know, we're not gonna be an athlete forever, but we're always gonna be a human being. And I think we forget to work on, you know, some other skills that are going to be helpful for us in the society. And we are much bigger than our own sport, you know. Like, I think our purpose goes way beyond just, you know, scoring more goals or making more saves, you know, or in winning more games. You know, it's about, you know, like, what can I do for society then that goes beyond my sport, you know. And I think that that brings me to my next question. um what are some of the qualities that you see? You talk about elite athletes, right? What are some of the qualities that you see in common when we are talking and looking uh f- in elite athletes?
So when having been a child athlete and then a pro athlete and being exposed to all range of different types of athletes my entire life, and also having the blessing of being coached by a sports psychologist for 12 of my 15 years. And her name was Gayleen Clues, and there's an excellent book that she wrote called The Metacognitive Athlete, if anybody's interested in checking that out, because it really talks about the necessary skills to become elite. But the number one that stands out for me is intent. An athlete has to have intent on where they see themselves going and intent on achieving what they believe they can do, even if nobody else does. And a time when I saw this question, it reminded me of my obsession with sport has been there since I was a child. And I remember there was a question at a school assembly when I was in sixth grade, and they said, um, stand up if you know what you're going to do. And so in 300 people, I stood up and said, I want to be a professional athlete. And the headmaster said, in what sport? And I said, I don't know yet. And everyone started laughing.
Mhm.
But my goal in life was I didn't want to get a job other than doing sport. So I was just going to find the sport that I could achieve that in. And I
Mhm.
think when I'm working with athletes, it's great to have talent. Okay, that's really helpful. It's great to have enthusiasm and passion, but if you don't have that intent to be committed, be determined, to do what it takes, to sacrifice, then you won't achieve the results which you hope to.
Mhm. That makes a lot of sense, and I wasn't expecting that. And do you feel like a lot of athletes lack intent in a way? Because I feel like I have so many athletes that I see that they, for some reason, they stop pursuing college, professional, any level. They just stop. Do you think that comes from a lack of intent?
It can be a combination of a couple of things. You can have all the intent in the world, but if you don't have the guidance, the resources, if you have financial obligations elsewhere, where I saw with I coached youth girls soccer for a long time, and the club that I was at the time was primarily Hispanic. And as the teenage girls got older, they were obligated to go and get jobs. So really, to become in that, 0.4% is the percentage of athletes that will become professional, and it's 4% for high school athletes to become D1 college athletes. That very small percentage means that um, they not only have to have that intent and that drive and that determination, but they also need a lot of other factors. And just like, one of the reasons for having conversations today and talking with someone like yourself who's clearly supportive of athletes, if I didn't have those coaches who supported me and parents willing to drive me, I wouldn't have been able to achieve what I was able to achieve. But in saying that, I also had to work 3 jobs.
Hmm.
So like you have to you have to really want it. And to be honest, when I hear of your friend telling me that people are dropping out, it really comes down to they don't want it that bad.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's okay because it's not for everybody.
Hmm.
But if you really want to go after it, then you're going to do whatever it takes. It is an obsession.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the obsession, and I like how you said it's okay if it's not for them.
Yeah,
I
it's
think,
totally okay
and
because you can take those. One of the things I love to tell a lot of parents initially when they come work with me and they say, well, we're not sure if our son or daughter is going to be elite. And I said to them exactly what I've said to you. Well, let me gauge their level of intent and we'll give it a go. And then ultimately the athlete will determine their own path forward. But what I hope from my program is that they can take those skills that they've learned and say they get to second year of college and it's not working for them, they can pivot and they can use those skills and apply it to a different area of life.
yeah, yeah, I agree, and I feel like we learn a lot through the process, and through the process, much is gained. And I think it's okay if you wanna kind of like if you see that it's not for you, And I think a lot of people that are listening to us are going to be thinking about that, like is it really for me, And it's okay. It's okay if it's not. But I think if we focus on the things that we have learned, I think it becomes a much easier decision to make, and we don't feel too bad about ourselves thinking that we are just giving up, because one thing is quitting, another thing is giving up, and it's okay to quit, because sometimes uh, I read in a book the other day, quitting is a skill that a lot of people don't have it, and I think we forget to have that difference in mind, that quitting is one thing, giving up is another thing.
Yeah, well, you make a really good point, but I think what's even more important to highlight to the athletes listening is you always have the choice. I never want athletes to feel as though I have to keep doing this because mum and dad put so much effort into me, because coaches put so much effort into me, because I've been doing this so many years and I'm expected to keep going. The number one thing is if you're not enjoying it, if you're not happy, then we need to reconsider your circumstance and come up with a new plan. And that may be still having sport in your life as an outlet, but maybe not at the level that you're currently at. And to be honest, as someone who is a parent, I have 4 teenagers at the moment, so feel sorry for me. Um, I say to them, I just want you to love what you do. I don't have any desire for you to be a professional. And they've already said, Mum, we don't want to do what you did. It looked horrible. I want a normal childhood. My 19-year-old said, I want to go to college and have a normal college experience. I don't want to be a student athlete because, like I said, that the commitment from those athletes is extraordinary and it's a sacrifice. So you are losing some social aspect. But when people ask me, would I do it all again and live the life the way I lived? I would in a heartbeat because I might have missed out on parties, but I had a different community. I had a different experience. I traveled the world and met athletes all over the world. And that was my high that I got from, you know, doing this at this level.
Yes, yes. I love that. Um, what are some of the techniques that you have, that you share with the athletes that you are working on with, that you can share with us? Is there anything that you recommend them doing it, that it might be helpful to the mental side, like, I don't know, reading, journaling, any techniques like that?
Okay, that all right. I don't want to go on too long on this, but this time of year, let's make it like poignant to this. It's going to be it's the new year, so it's 2024. Before athletes launch into their latest training program or their next attack on, the person that beat them last year, and you want to avenge them, and I'm all for that. Let's get them, but take a moment to be reflective. We don't do that enough. We don't congratulate ourselves for what we have achieved, because as athletes, we tend to be very type A personalities that are perfectionists. And so we miss out on seeing some of the growth that we may have obtained in 2023. So I'd like to advocate for athletes to really find time each week to be reflective, and that reflective process can be doing some walking meditation. You could do it anywhere. You could actually do it walking home from practice. So I'm not expecting you to sit on a cushion, but I am expecting you just to be kinder to yourself and really give back what your body is putting out, because we demand so much of our bodies as athletes, and sometimes we just fail to nurture ourselves. And when that over time accumulates, that's when the body starts breaking down and goes, hey, I can't do this. So kind of having that, I like to call it like having a grateful heart, where you stop for a moment and you just go, hey, I may not have won the championship. I may have only got one PR this season, or I may not be where I want to be yet, but I'm still moving forward, and celebrate that. So kind of celebrate the small wins. And what that does is that keeps our momentum in our motivation. It continues, and that's what we want.
Yeah. There's actually a really interesting study by Harvard, that where they talk about happiness, and one of the things that they talk about, it's about that, it's just like sitting down every day and looking, um, maybe like three things that happen in your day that you are grateful for, and that they increase your level of happiness, and which makes us happier in general. And I think we do forget to do that in general, and especially when it comes to sport, we forget to celebrate the small wins for sure.
Yeah, and there was just one other thing that popped into my head, which I developed as from a young age as a young athlete, and it was really by chance. I had a chance meeting with a young man who his name was Gavin, and he had severe muscular dystrophy, and he was sitting in a wheelchair. And for those who don't know, muscular dystrophy is a disease which slowly, kills all the muscles in a young person until finally their heart stops working. So it's a really, tragic disease to have. But I met Gavin, and he was this guy in a wheelchair with this cool attitude. He had a Harley Davidson bandana on his head. He was just vibing. He was so cool. And I went up to him. We became friends, and he used to come to my training and practice, and watch me practice. And here I was, this young hotshot athlete, full transparency, egomaniac. My ego was out of control because I was good and I knew it. But what I failed to realize, and this comes back to the reflection, was that um, I had to really take a moment and go, hey, haven't just been blessed with athletic ability. I look at someone like my friend Gavin, who is in a situation where he has no control and he can't even feed himself. And here I am complaining about not getting a PR on a set of 200s on the track, when that is just brainless. And I remember having a tantrum at the track one day, and Gavin was there. And this is really embarrassing for me, but I'm going to share it anyway. I had a tantrum because I wasn't hitting my 200s on the track under 30, which coach wanted me to do. And so I spat the dummy. And I sort of said, why am I doing this? And Gavin turned to me and said, because you can. And then he left. And that was incredibly haunting to me, because I was like, wow, Belinda, you really are a jackass. And it's having those humbling moments and being reflective of, hey guys, We may not be able to win it all, but in many ways we've been blessed with incredible talent and ability. Never take that for granted, and never lose sight of what's important too, because we do tend to get lost in the next goal, the next team, the next championship. We're healthy, we're happy, and so many other people are not in that situation.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and I think once we are able to see life through that point of view, it becomes easier to to win the
Yeah,
next one. You know. Um,
yeah.
so my next question for you, for us to wrap it up, it's a question that I always ask our guest speaker, because me and my partner, we always talk about success, and we always like to hear what other people have to say about success. And I feel like everyone has their definition of success. So what's your definition of success?
Definition of success, it's fairly broad, but I really like, I guess for me to have a successful year is really to gauge on how much I've grown as a person. As an athlete, I always wanted to continually improve my performance. I always wanted to get faster. I always wanted to get fitter. I always wanted to move the needle. And I guess that in a sporting arena, success was measured by how many wins or performance or prize money or sponsorship. But after being in that environment for a long time, my perspective of success changed, because, to be honest, that wasn't giving me happiness. But what was giving me happiness was growing as a person and learning more, and inspiring other athletes, or having athletes come up to me and say, hey, I'm really impressed with that. How did you do that? And by sharing with others. So, to have the opportunity to speak with you today is just another part of that. How can I share to help others? How can I perhaps learn from you? How can I learn from the athletes listening that might have questions? And it's having that approach to always wanting to be growing as a person. That to me equates to a level of success, which is continual. I don't think there should be a benchmark on, oh, you achieve this, you're successful. Because all of that, to be honest, all athletes are one injury away from retirement. And, um, you know, where do we go then? So it's, again, reframing success.
Hmm. Yeah, I relate a lot to that. I feel like I had like a few last seasons here that weren't too good because of results, because I was expecting certain results and I wasn't having those results, and that wasn't bringing me any type of happiness. But when I was able to see things from a different point of view, like, wait a second, let me look at like 3 years ago and where I am at now, I'm much better, and like you said, that's what really matters, right? Because we can just rely on results all the time. I think we should look for them, should work towards good results, but I mean, the progress that we have, it's what really matters.
Yeah, and I think that the takeaway, I'm hoping that if there are coaches listening, is to make sure you recognize those little steps of improvement for athletes, because and that's just little comments here and there, and commenting on how an athlete has developed, or they've improved a mastery of a certain skill, because it's those little achievements that really can help an athlete maintain their motivation, their love for it, rather than just, hey guys, we have this championship, we have to win, head down, plow all the way through. And sometimes athletes get lost in, well, there's two things that I see happening. Athletes get lost in, am I doing enough? Can I do more? Coach hasn't said anything, so am I doing the wrong thing? And coach is focused on the result, so he's not even worrying about. He's just like, do the work. But I feel that gap is necessary to be closed, so that athletes can be continually reminded and reinforced with some level of, doesn't have to be super positive, but just to, there's two, I guess there's two camps. There's people who want to be positive and people who want to stay neutral. You can do it any way you like, but giving feedback which helps the athlete grow, I feel, is a continual need for the athlete, and not just to wait for the result and go, yeah, we did it, that was a good job, yay for us. It's like, hey, no, that training session was good. I liked your effort. I
Mm-hmm.
liked your concentration. So you don't necessarily have to comment on something that produces a result. You can just observe your athlete and go, hey, I really appreciated how you worked extra hard on that set.
Yeah.
And for an athlete, hearing that from their coach, who, by the way, coaches, if you don't realize, they put you on a massive pedestal and they, worship you a lot of the time. I know I did with my own coach. I still do today. Absolutely adore her. Your words are like gospel. So just take the time to pay attention to those athletes, not just when they're winning, but in that process.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I couldn't agree more. As an athlete, I can promise you that it makes a huge difference when the coaches um give a little bit of compliment, just about a progress here, a good pass, a good save or something like that. And I think we probably need to make another episode just focused on coaches, because
Yeah, of course. That would be awesome. I
yeah.
can, and also I've experienced both sides of coaching, like
Mhm,
having, having had great coaches, having had horrible coaches,
mhm,
having been a coach for myself for 10 years. And also, listen, I fully admit I had moments where I was a horrible coach because I lost sight of what the real objective of coaching was. And
mhm.
it became less about the athletes and more about me. And so when I got over that ego, had to get over the ego of the athlete. And then when I got over the ego of the coach, and now I'm in another phase of getting over another ego. But yeah, that would be a great conversation to have.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. We'll need to schedule that for the future for sure. But well, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing all of that, to finding the time to do that. And I'm sure it was helpful for a lot of people listening, coaches and athletes, and parents as well. But I mean, even for myself, I'm always learning something new that I apply to my life. So I really appreciate you coming over.
Thank you. And the last thing I want to say to the athletes that are listening is that I always tell my athletes to keep their eyes on the horizon. So always kind of look forward, because we think that the training that we're doing, it's kind of like, this is my philosophy. We think the training that we're doing is for the performance that is coming, but actually it's an ongoing process of performance where I believe, for example, being a professional endurance athlete for, I don't know, over 20 years, really prepared me to have 4 children
Mhm.
and and manage 4 teenagers and be fit. So it's like all of life is preparation for one after the other, after the other, after the other. And just to, sometimes when the results aren't coming fast enough, just step back, take a breather, and put your eyes on the horizon and know that there's so much more ahead of you than just where you're at right now.
Mhm. Um, yeah, and before we go, where can people find you? I know you are on Instagram. So where can people find you? And also, I would like you to maybe recommend like a book, a podcast, or anything like that that you would like to share.
Well, in regard to my new program, you can find Athlete Neuroplasticity Reset at coachbperformance.com. You can learn about me. You can find ways to contact me there. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook as Coach B, Coach Belinda Halloran. And for those athletes who are interested in combining neuroplasticity with sport, just to give you a kind of a taster of what you may experience with me, I highly recommend people read the book called The Brain That Changes Itself, okay, by Norman Dodges. And I think I pronounced his last name correctly, Doidges, Doidges, perhaps. The Brain That Changes Itself, really amazing in regard to the power of neuroplasticity. Once you get a feel for just how impactful the brain is malleable and can be able to be changed, then come and find me and I'll teach you how we combine the both. And yeah, you'll be even more awesome than you already are.
Awesome. I
That's
love
the
that.
plan.
Well, yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Agor. Thank you to your podcast.